let's say 50 kilowatt peak plus batteries. There's not a huge demand in terms of generation capacity to service these rural businesses and communities. So it's less about the capacity itself, but more about the number of mini grids, right? And so that's why we're so focused on increasing that number. We're not so concerned about what the capacity is. India needs gigawatts of energy. We're not a centralized energy solution. We're a decentralized energy solution tailored for rural communities that benefit more from these types of decentralized solutions. So from our perspective, it's more about the impact that we're making as opposed to the generation capacity that we're installing. In terms of financing, Husk Power to date has raised more than $40 million in equity and debt. The last equity round we raised was in 2016, I believe. Lead investors included Shell Ventures, the venture arm of the energy company, Engie, the French utility, two development finance institutions, Swed Fund and FMO from Europe. And we're very close to closing our next equity round. We expect that to be in the range of $40 to $50 million, including our existing investors, but also new investors that we're bringing on board, plus another $60+ million in debt that will be used for project finance to build out the pipeline of projects that we've developed in India and sub-Saharan Africa. We've been in India for almost 15 years now. It's our most mature market, and it's probably the market that needs the least amount of capital to do what we want to do. We're already essentially EBITDA positive or profitable at the country level here in India. So we'll be using a significant amount of that equity and debt for India to build out our pipeline and grow our business, but the majority of that financing will actually go to expanding our operations in Africa. One of the key things that Husk has been able to do based on its origins in India is take all of these learnings from the past 15 years and apply them to emerging markets in sub-Saharan Africa, where the need is much greater, right? So India's got a national grid presence. In most of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa, there's still no reliable grid or any grid in rural communities. So this type of solution, the solar mini grid that's community-based, really has a huge potential to scale even more there. So because we've been able to raise financing in India more easily, the lion's share, the majority of the financing that we're raising now will go to expanding our operations in sub-Saharan Africa. Access to affordable debt is critical to any energy infrastructure business. It's a very capital-intensive business. We're building not only generation but also transmission and distribution. So the ability to access long-term affordable debt is critical. We started last year doing that in India. We raised about $4 million from the India Renewable Energy Development Agency, ETEREDA, in local currency. That was a great start, and we're in the process of closing some additional debt specific for India. So, we cannot scale at the speed that we want to in India or in any market, but especially in India, if we can't access local debt on a long-term basis, affordable basis. So, ETEREDA had the foresight to do that last year, and we are confident that we'll be raising additional debt for India in 2023 and beyond. So it's an interesting question. I think what I've seen in other markets outside of India is that the trend towards integrating more decentralized systems like solar mini grids into the broader grid infrastructure is a trend that's happening in the United States, in Europe, and other markets. Even in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we're already partnering with the discoms there to build interconnected mini grids. I think where we can still make a really important impact in India, and where there's hopefully more work to be done on the regulatory and policy front, is for the discoms here to look more seriously at ways that they can work and partner with private sector mini grid developers like Husk to lower their cost of operations by mobilizing the private capital that we're bringing into the market, and work with us on a franchising model or whatever it might be to lower their losses, to lower their operation costs, to reduce the deficits that they're seeing right now in terms of operations, and mobilize private sector operators like us, but also the capital that we can bring with our operations to create a diverse and integrated energy future for India that's 100% renewable. So we're 100% renewable. We have the capacity to integrate our batteries, our solar generation into the grid, and to also take advantage of the transmission and distribution infrastructure that's already been created, and actually serve rural communities in India better, more reliably, with higher quality power that can then drive that economic growth that we need to see that aligns with the government's rural livelihood mission. So I think that that's where the most of the focus on the work should be, in terms of figuring out how do we do that and bring that public-private partnership to the forefront instead of the background, which is where it is today, and create a more integrated net zero energy infrastructure for all of India, including rural India, going into the future.